Zadandani, Electro Ninja here, and welcome back to Electro Ninja's Lab. In today's video, we are going to be talking about My Hero Academia, Chapter 304. Now, if you are not ready for spoilers, do not watch this video. This one contains more spoilers for the series than any chapter before it. So, if you are not caught up, please do not watch this, okay? Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's actually talk about Chapter 304, The Meeting of the Users. This is a serious chapter, like I said, and honestly, it's a bit insane, to say the least. We finally get to see every single user of One for All, and all in the same place. The second and third users, for some reason, are looking the other way, which I do want to get into that at the end of this, but everyone else is there. The only people who don't talk are 6 and 7, aka Nanashimura and whoever number 6 is. Always forget what his name is. Oh wait, no, he doesn't have a name yet, so never mind. But primarily, the three main speakers for this chapter are that of One for All and the fourth and fifth users, who really do most of the talking. Banjo, yeah, like I said, he does a lot of the talking. But the fact remains that this is a really interesting chapter, and also solidifies a few things in my mind. One, All Might is actually quirkless. 100% he was born quirkless. Yes, it was a chance and all of this stuff, but 100% at this point I am willing to say that 100% All Might is quirkless. He did not retain any powers. He did not have any powers. The muscle form is actually what he just says. Him showing off, him flexing, all that jazz. It's been explained multiple times in the manga, as well as the anime, and now in team-up missions. But yes, that 100% is just him flexing. It's not a quirk, specifically. But I think that's something that's actually really interesting. Something that's kind of not talked about very much. First off is the fact that All Might specifically mentions that he was able to use 100% of All for One, or One for All, almost immediately. But this actually makes something a little bit more clear to me, and that is that Deku 100% was not born quirkless. So let's actually get into this. So first off, like I said, all of the different people talk to him and explain a lot of their story, also revealing that the most important factor of this is that the fourth user reveals that he died of old age at 40. Let me say that again. The fourth user died of old age at 40. All of the other users died in battles and all this jazz, but no, the fourth user freaking died of old age at 40 because too much of the quirk was within him. Yeah, that's what they're explaining it as. And honestly, that is insane to me. We now know that the quirk is very different than we thought it was. Basically, the stockpiling stocks up so much quirk that it basically becomes ridiculous and so overpowered that using it for too long is dangerous, and bodies simply can't handle it. I will get in. There's a lot of details in here that I don't really want to go over all of them, but I think something interesting has happened. Basically, think of it like a goblet. Normally, One for All is so overflowing because the fact that it's been gaining quirks. But then when it got poured into All Might, he didn't have a quirk, so he could actually contain all of it without getting as much affected as, say, other people were. All of the previous users and all that jazz. But here's something interesting to think about. If that is the reason that he is able to handle the quirk so much easier than the others and is able to live for so much longer, why then is Deku not able to handle the quirk by himself? Now, obviously, everyone assumes, okay, Deku is quirkless, this, that, and the other thing. But, unlike All Might, but like the previous users, Deku can't handle 100% of the power by himself. Instead, he is forced to use a small amount of it, and he's basically been building it up over these past few chapters. So, if that's the case, that means that it's overflowing still. It didn't overflow more because of how long All Might had it, and now it's being transferred to another person who has an empty goblet, right? Wrong. Deku doesn't have an empty goblet. It looks empty, it's pretty minuscule, and people understand that. Even the users of One for All seem to understand that. Meaning that the quirk isn't going to affect him as drastically as, say, the 4th user, or the 5th user, or the 6th user, so on and so forth. Only All Might is not affected. But Deku is still going to feel some of the effects of it. Because of the fact that he wasn't born quirkless and still has some residual traces of his original quirk, it means that he will continue to gain the quirk and become stronger with the quirk over the next few years. And once he's actually unlocked his own quirk, it's not necessarily going to mean that he's not going to be affected by it, but instead, he is going to, when he unlocks his quirk, it means that, like they say in this, he cannot transfer it on, but he can still live a meaningful life, is what I'm assuming it means. He can live out the rest of his days as just a regular person after he's dealt with One for All. Or All for One, I mean. There's a lot to it, and I really don't know exactly what's going to be happening, but yeah. Now, like I said, only really the users who Deku currently has their quirks for even talk. As in, the 6th user does not speak at all in this chapter. He basically just looks at them. 2nd and 3rd, again, do not talk whatsoever. In fact, unlike the rest of them, they're not sitting down in chairs. They are turned away, looking away. And I think that's important. One of 2 things comes to mind of this. 1, the 2nd and 3rd users happen to be people that use the quirk irresponsibly, basically using it to be, oh, I'm awesome, this, that, and the other thing. And as such, they don't think that they should be allowed to sit with the rest of them, and are being punished for their actions years ago. But the other possibility is far more interesting. No one really mentions the fact that those 2 are turned away as of right now, and I think that that's actually going to be happening next time. But I think that the first user, One for All himself, is actually the one who chose to have those 2 be the successors, and asked them to not reveal their powers unless it was time. Basically, since there is no data on them, literally none, these 2 had basically went into hiding for the 2nd user received the quirk and then immediately passed it on to the 3rd user. The 2 of them then went into hiding for multiple years until they eventually came across the 4th user, passed it on to him, who then would actually become a hero for a short amount of time before going off and hiding again. And we learn all about him and all this stuff. But no one should know what the power of those first two users is, except for obviously those who actually unlock their powers. I believe that these two powers go hand in hand. Two quirks that happen to come from the same person. Or rather, the same family. So we always hear that one for all and all for one are brothers. I think that they had two other brothers, two younger brothers. So far, two of them have, or at least maybe one more brother. The other one I think could actually be a possibility of something else. But it's a possibility that these two users have this quirk, and in actuality, they are hiding these quirks from everyone because their quirks are power-based, quirk-based. The first one, obviously, one for all, or all for one, starts out with the power of taking quirks and redistributing them. The second brother is the passing on quirk. He can take his quirk and pass it on to somebody else, which also combined with the stockpiling quirk that one for all or all for one gave him. But then there are two other quirks. These quirks are slightly different as well. Each one has something to do with quirks themselves. The first one is the ability to restore quirks, given as basically a way to make up for Shigaraki's original mayhem, and basically allowing him, he was given the ability to restore people's quirks rather easily. The whole concept of it is kind of hard to describe, but basically he was also upset with his brother and started returning people's quirks back to them. This confused everyone because no one knew who was doing it, because this brother was also assumed to be quirkless. But the only person who knew that this person had a quirk was that of the other two brothers. So basically, the one who would become one for all, as well as the the fourth brother, who I think just has a healing quirk. One that will allow the person to use their quirk without having any pushback, any detrimental effects to them. But these quirks, they sound useless to anyone. All for One basically has managed to take multiple different quirks that basically mean that he has no pushback anyways. So what does he care? He doesn't care about his brother's quirk. It's useless, and nobody knows that it has any power in the first place. But the fact remains that he is able to use that quirk. And more than likely, when the quirk was passed on to him as basically, keep this safe, get it away, when he started to use the power of One for All and unleash his first attack, he realized that he had no recoil, unlike the second brother, who did have a little bit of recoil. Not too much, probably about the same amount of damage that Deku gets when he flicks his finger, but it's basically throughout his entire punch. And it's a rather small amount of damage that's done to it. By using all of that, even though he could go 100% all the time, it meant that he wasn't getting damaged at all. Meaning that with that, these quirks had to be hidden, and as such were put away to make sure that no one would realize what they were. The idea of this is complicated, and I kind of still doubt it myself. I still think that the third user has something to do with water, but I don't know. Second user, 100% though, I want to say is actually something to do with restoring quirks. The power sounds overpowered as crap, and that that someone would definitely want it. And especially One for her or all for One would definitely want this quirk. But if he never knows that this quirk exists, it means that he can't go after it. So hiding that quirk away was their only option. And basically they would tell the plan was that if you can pass it on safely, you pass it on and then you move on. You get away from it as quickly as possible. There's a lot to it, and I don't want to get into all of that whole situation right now, but yeah. But at the very end of this episode, this is where things start to get interesting. Nana Shimura looks Deku in the eye and asks him one simple question. Can you kill Tomura Shigaraki? I think this is an important thing to realize. The first, All For One, absolutely everyone agrees, even Deku agrees that this man has to be stopped. And killing him is more than likely the best option. But the question is, can Deku kill Tomura Shigaraki? I think that there are other options, and I'm pretty sure that Deku does as well. And he wants there to be another option. But the point that they're trying to get across is that Deku needs to realize that there might not be another option. Even if you want to save Tomura Shigaraki, he may have to make that decision where he has to kill him. Because there are no other options. It's honestly a bit like the Fire Lord situation in in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Basically, to put it simply, Deku doesn't want to kill Shigaraki. And he doesn't want to kill him because he knows that there is good in him and that he could save him. He noticed during the battle that it looked like Tomura wanted to be saved. Saved from his abuser, from the person who is controlling him. But the fact remains that at some point, that might not be an option. They need to know right now if he can handle it. It's not going to be a situation of, if you cannot do this, you need to pass the quirk on now to someone who does not have a quirk. It's, you need to be ready to do this. Maybe not now, but eventually you need to be able to handle this. You need to be able to kill this monster that has become. That is the quirk that they need to realize. They need to realize that this quirk needs to be gone forever. And if Deku can't do it, someone else will have to. Someone else will have to take up the burden, learn how to use One for All practically by themselves, and they'll have to learn how to do it quickly, or else they will have to keep passing it on, and keep the fight going for years and years, because Tomura Shigaraki is going to keep coming. Now that he has the quirk, even if One for All, or All for One, is not defeated, Tomura Shigaraki will keep coming, and will eventually destroy everyone. But if his quirk can be stopped, that's great. They all know that is a fantastic option. But in the case that it's not an option, Deku has to be able to stand up, to go up in front of Shigaraki and take his quirk or take his life. One of those has to happen. And actually, I think that is something else to think about. Perhaps the third user doesn't have a healing quirk, but rather a quirk to remove quirks. Obviously, Deku is going to be getting the sixth user's quirk next. learn how to use it, and then at long last he will obtain the second user's quirk. And with that quirk, he will then be able to use the quirk to finally restore his own quirk, allowing him to use a ton of quirks, being one of the most powerful beings in all of history. But he's still not ready to kill Shigaraki. He wants to save him. And at the last moment, the last few moments, someone pops into his head. It's the third user, and he says, "It's time to use my quirk." I don't know how powerful it's gotten over these past years. It may be so powerful that it removes quirks entirely from the entire world. But the options are remove Shigaraki's quirk now. Remove it for good, or kill him. That is your choice. And that is a devastating choice that Deku will have to make. No matter what it is, it means that countless people are suddenly going to be without a quirk. It's possible that Deku himself will no longer have a quirk. He's going to be quirkless again. But if he can remove Shigaraki's quirk once and for all, it means that the world is saved. And we are simply starting over. Will they eventually get quirks back? No one knows. But I think that is going to be a choice that Deku will have to make. And if he chooses to use the quirk, I don't know how he'll react. As someone born without a quirk, or in his actual case, someone whose quirk was stolen from them, making that final choice to say, we have to remove everyone's quirk. We have to remove someone's quirk. That decision is a hard decision to make. But honestly, I think it's the choice that he'd be willing to make. He lived his life without a quirk for most of it. He'll be able to do it again. And so will others. It'll take time, but they can live with that. But anyways, guys, I know this video was a bit long, and some of those last topics were really tough, but I think that's an important factor to realize. Going forward, things are going to be going insane. Deku has to make a really hard decision, and it's not an easy one, no matter what we say. I think, honestly, after this next chapter, Deku will be waking up at the very end of it. I don't know exactly, but I think that's the possibility there. But we don't know. Anyways, guys, I know that, like I said, this video was heavy and all that jazz, but if you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, or even if you just haven't subscribed yet, because it really does help us out a lot. And of course, if you are new, please subscribe. And oh wait, I already said that. If you have any thoughts or theories, please leave them down in the comments below. And of course, if you want to support the channel even more, then definitely head down to the description and check out all of our links down there, including our other 2 channels, our social medias, and ways you can support us financially, including our Patreon, our merch store, and of course the book. But anyways, guys, I've been Electro Ninja, and I will see you guys next time. But on!